Madison Harper had dreamed of this day since she was a little girl. Today was finally her wedding day, and everything had to be absolutely perfect. She stood in front of the full-length mirror in the bridal suite, adjusting her veil for the 100th time. The dress had cost more than most people's cars, with thousands of tiny crystals sewn by hand into the silk fabric. It sparkled under the lights like fresh snow in the sunshine. The Rosewood estate was the most expensive venue in the entire city. Madison had put down a deposit 2 years ago just to secure the date. The ballroom looked like something out of a fairy tale, with white roses covering every surface. She had counted them once during the setup. 12,000 roses to be exact. The crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over everything, and the tables were set with gold-rimmed china that cost $300 per plate. Madison's mother had questioned the budget more than once.
"Sweetheart, are you sure you need ice sculptures shaped like swans?"
But Madison had been firm. This wasn't just a wedding. This was a statement. She worked hard for her position as a marketing executive at one of the biggest firms downtown. She earned her success, and she wanted everyone to see it. 200 guests filled the ballroom, and Madison could hear the string quartet playing softly as she made her way down the grand staircase. Her husband Derek waited at the altar, looking handsome in his custom-tailored tuxedo. The ceremony went off without a single hitch. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, the guests erupted in applause. Madison felt like she was floating on air. The reception started exactly on schedule. Madison had hired the best catering company in the state, the kind that served celebrities and politicians. The servers moved through the crowd like dancers, each one dressed in crisp black and white uniforms. They carried silver trays loaded with champagne glasses and appetizers that looked too beautiful to eat. Madison worked the room like a professional, stopping at each table to accept congratulations and compliments. "Your dress is stunning. The flowers are breathtaking. This is the most beautiful wedding I've ever seen." Each comment made her smile wider. This was exactly what she had envisioned. Around 8 o'clock, after the first dance and the cake cutting, Madison finally sat down at the head table. Her feet ached in her designer heels, but she refused to let it show. She was scanning the room, making sure every detail was still in place, when she noticed one of the servers approaching their table. The young woman looked to be in her mid-20s. She had her hair pulled back neatly and moved with quiet confidence as she carried a champagne bottle. She wore the same uniform as all the other servers, but something about her caught Madison's attention. Maybe it was the way she held herself, with a certain dignity that seemed almost out of place for someone serving drinks. The server made her way along the head table, refilling glasses with a practiced hand. She smiled politely at each guest, murmuring quiet congratulations. Madison watched her progress, her champagne glass ready for a refill. Just as the server reached Madison's spot, another server rushed past carrying a tray of dirty plates.
The young woman had to step aside quickly to avoid a collision.
In that split second of movement, her arm brushed against Madison's dress. It was barely a touch, just the lightest contact with the layers of silk and tulle that spread out from Madison's chair. Madison felt it immediately. Her eyes went wide, and she looked down at her dress in horror, searching for any sign of damage. There was nothing there. No stain, no wrinkle, no mark of any kind. But in Madison's mind, the dress had been violated. This perfect, expensive, once-in-a-lifetime dress had been touched by careless hands. "Excuse me," Madison's voice cut through the ambient noise of the reception. Conversations at nearby tables stopped. People turned to look. The server froze, the champagne bottle still in her hand. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. I was just trying to avoid. Do you have any idea how much this dress costs?" Madison's voice grew louder. She could feel the heat rising in her cheeks, but she didn't care. "Do you have any idea how important this day is?" The server's face remained calm, professional. "I apologize sincerely. I didn't mean to." "You didn't mean to?" Madison stood up now, her chair scraping against the floor. More people were watching. Good, they should see this. They should see how this girl had almost ruined everything. How do people like you even get hired for events like this? Don't they have standards? The words hung in the air like smoke. Madison saw the server's eyes widen slightly, saw her jaw tighten. For a moment, the young woman said nothing. The ballroom had gone completely silent. Even the string quartet had stopped playing. Derek touched Madison's arm gently. "Honey, maybe we should—" Madison shook him off. "No, Derek, this is our wedding. Our perfect day, and she nearly destroyed my dress. She turned back to the server who still stood there holding the champagne bottle. I want you removed from this event immediately. I want to speak to your manager. The server took a slow breath. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but steady. I understand you're upset. Again, I apologize for brushing against your dress. It wasn't intentional and I can see there's no damage. But I'll step away now. Yes, you will step away, Madison snapped. And you won't come back. I'm reporting you to your company. You clearly don't belong at an event of this caliber. Something flashed in the server's eyes. Not anger exactly, but something deeper. Disappointment, maybe. Or sadness. She set the champagne bottle down carefully on the table, straightened her shoulders, and walked away with her head held high. As she disappeared through the service doors, the ballroom slowly came back to life. Conversations resumed in hushed tones. The quartet started playing again. But Madison could feel the eyes on her. She could see some of the guests whispering to each other, their expressions troubled. Derek leaned in close. That was harsh, don't you think? Madison sat back down, smoothing her dress with shaking hands. The adrenaline was starting to fade, replaced by a strange feeling in her stomach, but she pushed it away. I was protecting my wedding. Our wedding. She should have been more careful. One of Madison's bridesmaids, Victoria, came over from the next table. Are you okay? But her voice sounded strained, and she wouldn't quite meet Madison's eyes. I'm fine, Madison said firmly. Everything is fine. But for the rest of the evening, something felt off. The guests seemed more subdued. Some people left earlier than expected. When Madison's aunt came to say goodbye, she hugged Madison tightly and whispered, I love you, sweetheart. I hope you think about what happened tonight. Madison didn't understand what she meant. She had simply stood up for herself. She had protected her special day. Anyone would have done the same thing, wouldn't they? As the reception finally wound down and the last guest departed, Madison and Derek stood in the empty ballroom surrounded by dying roses and melting ice sculptures. The magic of the evening felt like it had evaporated, leaving behind something cold and uncomfortable. Madison told herself it didn't matter. The wedding was over. Tomorrow they would be on a plane to Hawaii for their honeymoon. Tomorrow she could forget all about one clumsy server and move on with her perfect new life. She had no idea that tomorrow, nothing would be perfect at all. Madison woke up to sunlight streaming through the hotel windows. For a moment she forgot everything and just smiled. She was married, Mrs. Madison Chen now. She reached for her phone on the nightstand, ready to scroll through all the congratulations messages she knew would be waiting. Instead, her screen showed 93 missed calls. Her heart started pounding before she even understood why. Text messages flooded in one after another, making her phone buzz continuously in her hand. The first one was from her college roommate. Madison, what were you thinking? Call me ASAP. The next was from her cousin. I can't believe you did that. I'm so embarrassed. Madison's hands shook as she opened her social media. The first thing she saw made her stomach drop. Her wedding video was everywhere. But it wasn't the beautiful ceremony or the first dance. It was her, standing at that table, yelling at the server. Someone had recorded the entire interaction. The video was crystal clear. You could hear every word Madison had said, every sharp tone, every cutting remark. The caption read, Rich bride has meltdown at her own wedding. Watch till the end. The video had been posted 8 hours ago. It already had 4 million views. Madison scrolled through the comments with growing horror. There were thousands of them, and they just kept coming. This is disgusting behavior. Imagine treating someone like that on what's supposed to be the happiest day of your life. That poor server handled it with so much grace. The bride should be ashamed. I feel sorry for the groom. He married a nightmare. Madison threw her phone across the bed. Derek stirred beside her, rubbing his eyes. What's wrong? Everything, Madison whispered. Everything is wrong. She showed him the video. Watched his face change as he listened to her voice saying those words. Words that sounded so much worse when played back. When had her voice gotten so shrill, so mean? Derek ran his hand through his hair. Oh no. Madison, this is bad. I know it's bad. She felt tears starting to form. But I was just upset. People are acting like I committed a crime. Derek didn't respond right away. He just stared at the phone screen, watching the video play again. Finally, he said, You told her that people like her don't belong at events like ours. What did you mean by that? Madison opened her mouth, then closed it again. In the heat of the moment, she hadn't thought about her exact words. She had just been angry. But now, hearing Derek say them back to her, they sounded terrible. They sounded like something an awful person would say. I didn't mean it like that, she said weakly. Then how did you mean it? Derek's voice was gentle but firm. Because that's what everyone heard. That's what everyone saw. Before Madison could answer, her phone rang. It was her boss, Richard. She answered with a shaking hand. Madison, I'm going to be direct with you, Richard said. His voice had none of its usual warmth. Our company is receiving hundreds of emails about you. Clients are threatening to pull their accounts. The board held an emergency meeting this morning. Madison felt like she couldn't breathe. Richard, please. I made a mistake. I was stressed. You're being placed on administrative leave effective immediately. We'll review the situation in 2 weeks and make a decision about your future with the company. I suggest you hire a good PR consultant. And Madison, I'm disappointed. I thought you were better than this. He hung up before she could say anything else. Madison dropped the phone and buried her face in her hands. This couldn't be happening, not because of one small incident, not because of one server who should have been more careful, but even as she thought it, she knew how hollow it sounded. Derek's phone started ringing next. It was his mother. Madison could hear her voice through the speaker, high-pitched and upset. Derek, have you seen what people are saying? My friends are calling me. They're asking if this is really the woman you married. Your father is furious, then Madison's own mother called. Her voice was thick like she had been crying. Madison, sweetheart, what happened? This isn't who I raised you to be. Tell me this isn't who you are. Mom, I don't know what to say. Everything is falling apart. Maybe it needs to fall apart, her mother said quietly. Maybe you need to take a hard look at yourself. The calls kept coming. Madison's bridesmaids. Derek's friends. Even people Madison barely knew felt the need to reach out and express their disappointment. Some were angry. Some were sad. All of them had seen the video. By noon, the catering company had released an official statement. Madison read it on their website, her hands trembling. We stand behind our employees and condemn any form of discrimination or mistreatment. The team member in question is one of our finest workers. She's currently pursuing her graduate degree while working 2 jobs to support her family. She handled an unjust situation with professionalism and grace. We will not tolerate disrespect toward our staff. The statement had been shared thousands of times. People were praising the catering company for standing up for their employee. Some were even posting reviews of the company saying they would definitely hire them because they protected their workers. Madison felt sick. The server was working 2 jobs and going to school. She had a family depending on her. Somehow that made everything worse. Madison had assumed she was just some part-time worker who didn't care about her job. She had made up an entire story in her head about who this woman was, and she had been completely wrong. Derek spent most of the afternoon on the phone with his father. Their family owned a construction business, and apparently, some clients were reconsidering their contracts. The video had spread so far that people were connecting Derek to Madison, and they didn't want to work with someone married to that bride from the video. We might need to postpone the honeymoon, Derek said quietly. My dad needs me at the office to handle damage control. Madison nodded numbly. The Hawaii trip that was supposed to start tomorrow suddenly seemed impossible. How could they enjoy paradise while their whole lives were crumbling? That evening, Madison attempted to write an apology. She sat at the hotel desk with her laptop, trying to find the right words. She typed and deleted, typed and deleted. Finally, she posted something to her social media. I want to apologize for my behavior at my wedding. I was stressed and overwhelmed and I reacted poorly. My words were taken out of context, but I understand that people are upset. I'm sorry if I offended anyone. She hit post and waited for things to get better. They got worse. The comments came flooding in immediately. If you offended anyone? You did offend people. This isn't an apology. This is an excuse. Stressed? Everyone gets stressed. That doesn't give you the right to treat people like trash. Your words weren't taken out of context. We heard exactly what you said. Derek read the post and shook his head. This sounds like you're making excuses. Like you're sorry people are upset, not sorry for what you did. But I am sorry people are upset, Madison insisted. Are you sorry for what you did? Derek asked. Because there's a difference. Madison stared at him. Was she sorry? Or was she just sorry that she got caught? The question made her uncomfortable, so she pushed it away. Her phone buzzed with a new notification. Her best friend from high school had unfollowed her on all social media. Then another friend. Then another. Madison watched her follower count drop in real time. People she had known for years were deciding they didn't want to be associated with her anymore. Victoria, her maid of honor, sent a long text message. I love you, Madison, but I can't defend what you did. I've been thinking about all the times you've made comments about people and I brushed them off. I told myself you didn't mean it. But maybe you did mean it. I need some space to think about our friendship. Derek ordered room service for dinner, but neither of them ate much. They sat in silence, the television playing quietly in the background. Every few minutes, Madison's phone would buzz with another notification. Another angry message. Another lost follower. Another consequence. What do I do? Madison finally asked. Her voice came out small and broken. How do I fix this? Derek looked at her for a long moment. I don't know if you can fix it, but if you're going to try, you need to start by actually understanding what you did wrong. Not just that you got caught, but why it was wrong in the first place. Madison wanted to argue. She wanted to defend herself. But sitting there in that hotel room, watching her life fall apart piece by piece, she couldn't find the words. Outside the window, the city lights twinkled like nothing had changed. But inside, Madison was beginning to realize that nothing would ever be the same again. And somewhere out there, that server was living her life, probably trying to forget the worst experience she'd had at work. Madison didn't even know her name. 3 days after the wedding, Madison was still hiding in the hotel room. She had ordered the same breakfast for the third morning in a row, barely touched it, and spent most of her time staring at the ceiling. Derek had gone to his father's office to deal with the business situation. He kissed her forehead before leaving, but the gesture felt distant, automatic. The knock on the door came at exactly 10 in the morning. Madison assumed it was housekeeping and called out that she didn't need anything. The knock came again, more insistent this time. She dragged herself to the door and found a courier standing there with a clipboard. Madison Chen, yes? I need you to sign for this certified letter. Madison's hand shook as she signed her name. The envelope was thick and official-looking, with a law firm's name embossed across the top. Her first thought was that someone was suing her for what happened at the wedding. Her second thought was that her company was firing her officially. She was wrong on both counts. Madison tore open the envelope and pulled out several pages of legal documents. Her eyes scanned the first page, trying to make sense of the legal language. Something about a property dispute, Derek's father's construction company, a contract disagreement with a developer. Then she saw the words that made her blood run cold. Presiding Judge, the Honorable Jasmine L. Carter. Jasmine. The name echoed in Madison's head. She frantically flipped through the pages looking for more information. There, stapled to the back, was a photograph of the judge who would be hearing the case. Madison's legs gave out. She sank to the floor, the papers scattering around her. It was her. The server from the wedding. The woman Madison had humiliated in front of 200 people. Except she wasn't just a server. She was a judge. Madison's mind raced, trying to make sense of it. How could a judge be working as a server? It didn't make any sense. Unless... She grabbed her laptop and searched for Judge Jasmine Carter. The results filled her screen immediately. The first article was from the local newspaper, dated 6 months ago. City's youngest judge appointed to district court. There was a photo of Jasmine in judicial robes, smiling at the camera. The article talked about her impressive legal career, her work at legal aid clinics, and her unanimous confirmation. Madison clicked on another link. This one was from a community magazine. Judge Jasmine Carter, honoring her father's legacy. The article explained that Jasmine's father had started a catering business 30 years ago. After he passed away 2 years ago, Jasmine helped her mother run the company on weekends. It keeps me connected to him, Jasmine was quoted as saying. And it reminds me that everyone deserves dignity and respect no matter what job they're doing. Madison felt like she might throw up. She kept reading, each article making things worse. Jasmine had graduated top of her class from law school. She had won awards for her community service. She was known for being fair but firm on the bench. One article mentioned that she had zero tolerance for prejudice or dishonesty. Zero tolerance. Madison called Derek immediately. He answered on the first ring. "What's wrong?" "Derek, come back to the hotel. Right now. We have a problem." 20 minutes later, Derek burst through the door. Madison showed him everything. The letter. The articles. The photographs. She watched the color drain from his face as he realized what this meant. "Oh God," Derek whispered. "She's the judge for our case. The case that could destroy my father's business." The lawsuit was complicated, but the basics were simple enough. Derek's father had signed a contract to build a commercial complex. Halfway through the project, there was a dispute about materials and costs. Now the developer was claiming breach of contract and demanding millions in damages. If they lost, the family business would be finished. Derek's father would lose everything he had spent 40 years building, and the woman who would decide the outcome was someone Madison had publicly degraded and insulted. "What do we do?" Madison asked. Her voice sounded strange in her own ears, high and panicked. Derek paced the room, running his hands through his hair repeatedly. "I need to call our lawyer. Maybe we can request a different judge. Maybe there's a conflict of interest or something." He called immediately. Madison listened to his side of the conversation, her heart sinking with every word. "Yes, I understand. But there has to be something." "No, I see. Okay, thank you." Derek hung up and looked at Madison with exhausted eyes. He says requesting a different judge without a valid legal reason would look bad. It could suggest we don't trust the judicial system. And if we mention what happened at the wedding as a reason, it would make things even worse. We'd be admitting that you behaved inappropriately toward a judge, and that could be seen as attempting to manipulate the court. So we just have to go forward with her as the judge? Madison felt tears streaming down her face. "After what I did to her?" "After what you did to her," Derek repeated quietly. There was something in his tone that made Madison look up. He wasn't looking at her with sympathy anymore. He was looking at her with something that might have been disappointment. Or anger, or both. "Derek, I'm sorry. I didn't know." "You didn't know she was a judge," Derek interrupted. "But would it have mattered if she was just a server? Would it have been okay to treat her that way if she wasn't someone important?" The question hung in the air between them. Madison wanted to say yes, of course it would have mattered. She would have treated anyone with respect, but the words died in her throat because she wasn't sure if they were true. "I need some air," Derek said. He grabbed his jacket and walked out, leaving Madison alone with the scattered papers and her laptop screen still showing Jasmine's accomplishments. Madison spent the next hour reading everything she could find about Jasmine. There were interviews, court records, community newsletter features. Jasmine volunteered at a legal clinic every Tuesday evening. She had helped dozens of people who couldn't afford lawyers. She gave talks at schools about the justice system. One video interview caught Madison's attention. Jasmine was speaking to a group of law students about integrity. "The law is supposed to be blind," she said. "It doesn't matter if someone is rich or poor, what they look like, where they come from. In my courtroom, everyone gets the same fair treatment. That's not just my job. That's my responsibility." Madison closed the laptop. She felt small and ashamed in a way she had never experienced before. For the past 3 days, she had been feeling sorry for herself. Sorry that she got caught. Sorry that people were mad at her. But sitting there in that hotel room, she finally felt sorry for what she had actually done. She had treated someone terribly. Not because that person had done anything wrong, but because Madison had made assumptions. She had looked at Jasmine in that server uniform and decided she was less important, less valuable, less deserving of basic respect, and now that person held power over something that could destroy Derek's family. But the worst part, the part that made Madison feel sick to her stomach, was realizing that she had been thinking about this all wrong. She wasn't worried about Jasmine. She was worried about what Jasmine could do to her. Even now, even after everything, Madison was still thinking about herself first. Derek came back an hour later. His eyes were red, and Madison wondered if he had been crying. He sat down heavily on the bed. "My dad knows," he said quietly. "I had to tell him. About the wedding. About the video. About who the judge is. What did he say?" "He asked me if I knew you were like this before we got married." Derek's voice cracked. "He asked me if I was sure I wanted to be married to someone with those kinds of views." "What did you tell him?" Derek looked at her directly for the first time since he had returned. I told him I didn't know. I told him I'm not sure who I married. The words hit Madison like a physical blow. She wanted to defend herself, to explain, to make him understand. But understand what? That she had always made little comments about people? That she had always felt superior to service workers? That she had always believed her expensive education and successful career made her better than others? She couldn't say any of those things because they would only prove his point. The hearing is in 3 weeks, Derek said. Our lawyer says we have a decent case based on the merits. The contract had some ambiguous language that works in our favor. But Judge Carter is known for being thorough. She'll examine every detail, and if she finds that my father's company was in the wrong, she won't hesitate to rule against us. Even after what I did to her. Especially after what you did to her, Derek said. Because she'll want to prove that she's fair. That she doesn't let personal feelings influence her decisions. Which means she might be even harder on us just to show she's not being biased. Madison felt the walls closing in. Everything she touched was turning to ashes. Her job was hanging by a thread. Her friends had abandoned her. Her family was ashamed of her. And now, because of her own actions, she might cost Derek's family everything they had worked for. I need to apologize to her, Madison said suddenly. I need to tell her I'm sorry. Derek shook his head. Our lawyer says any contact with the judge outside of court would be inappropriate. It could be seen as trying to influence her decision. You can't talk to her, Madison. You can't write to her. You can't do anything. So I just have to live with this? I just have to wait and see if I've destroyed your family's business because I couldn't control my temper for 5 seconds? Yes, Derek said simply. That's exactly what you have to do. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. You know what the worst part is? I keep thinking about all the times you've made comments. About servers being slow. About store clerks not being helpful enough. About people not being professional. I always thought you were just particular. Just had high standards. But now I'm wondering if it was something else. Something deeper. Madison wanted to argue, but she couldn't. Because she was wondering the same thing. Madison couldn't sleep anymore. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Jasmine's face. That moment when her expression had changed from professional politeness to something deeper. Hurt, maybe, or disappointment. Madison had seen it for just a split second before pushing the thought away. Now she couldn't stop seeing it. It was 2 a.m. and Derek was asleep beside her, or pretending to be. They had barely spoken in the past 2 days. He had moved back home to help his father prepare for the hearing, and Madison had checked out of the hotel and gone to stay with her parents. Her childhood bedroom felt like a prison. She grabbed her phone and opened the video again. She had watched it maybe 50 times now, and each time it got harder to watch. The way her voice sounded. The way she stood over Jasmine like some kind of authority figure. The way everyone in that ballroom had gone silent, uncomfortable, witnessing something they knew was wrong. Madison paused the video on Jasmine's face. Even in that moment, being publicly humiliated, Jasmine had maintained her composure. She had apologized even though it wasn't really her fault. She had walked away with dignity while Madison had continued her tantrum. Who does that? Madison thought. Who stays that calm when someone is treating them terribly? Someone who has probably experienced it before? A small voice in her head answered. Someone who has learned that responding with anger only makes things worse. Someone who has had to develop thick skin just to get through the day. The realization made Madison feel physically ill. She got out of bed and went to her laptop. She started searching, not for articles about Jasmine this time, but for something else. She typed in unconscious bias and started reading. Then how to recognize prejudice in yourself. Then understanding systemic discrimination. Hours passed. Madison read article after article, watched videos, listened to people sharing their experiences. She heard stories from people who had been treated like they didn't belong, like they were less than, like they were invisible. People who had been followed in stores, questioned about their credentials, dismissed by doctors, passed over for promotions. One woman's story stuck with Madison. She talked about working as a lawyer and having people assume she was the secretary, having clients ask to speak to the actual attorney. She talked about how exhausting it was to constantly prove herself, to be twice as good just to be seen as equal. Madison thought about Jasmine working 2 jobs while going to graduate school, becoming a judge at such a young age. That didn't happen by accident. That took incredible hard work and determination. And even with all those accomplishments, she still spent her weekends working at her family's catering business. honoring her father's memory. And Madison had looked at her and seen just a server, someone beneath her, someone who didn't matter. The sun was coming up when Madison's mother knocked on the door. "Honey, are you awake?" Madison opened the door. Her mother took one look at her face and pulled her into a hug. "You look terrible. Have you slept at all?" "I've been reading," Madison said. Her voice sounded hoarse from not speaking for hours. "Mom, I think I'm a bad person." Her mother led her to the bed and sat down beside her. "You're not a bad person, but you did a bad thing." "There's a difference, is there?" Madison asked. "Because I keep thinking about all the times I've made comments. All the times I've looked down on people. It wasn't just that one moment at the wedding. That's who I've been for a long time, isn't it?" Her mother was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Do you remember when you were in high school and you came home crying because you didn't make the cheerleading squad? You said the girls who made it only got in because they were popular, not because they were good." Madison nodded. "I should have challenged you on that," her mother continued. "I should have asked you why you assumed they didn't deserve it. But I was trying to make you feel better, so I agreed with you. I reinforced that thinking, and I'm sorry for that. It's not your fault, Mom. It's not all my fault," her mother corrected gently. "But I didn't help. None of us did. Your father and I worked hard to give you opportunities, and somehow you learned to look down on people who didn't have those same advantages. That's on us too." Madison felt tears running down her face. "What do I do now? How do I fix this?" "I don't know if you can fix it," her mother said honestly. "But you can try to do better going forward. You can actually change, not just apologize for getting caught." Later that morning, Madison did something she had been too scared to do before. She posted a new statement on her social media. This time she didn't write it quickly. She spent 2 hours on it, deleting and rewriting, making sure every word was honest. "I owe everyone a real apology, especially the woman I hurt at my wedding. I've spent the past week making excuses and feeling sorry for myself. But the truth is, what I did was wrong. It wasn't about stress or a bad day. It was about prejudice and entitlement that I've carried for a long time without examining. I treated someone terribly because I made assumptions about who she was based on what she looked like and what job she was doing. I was wrong. There's no context that makes it okay. There's no excuse that justifies it. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it right now. But I am committing to do better. I'm going to educate myself. I'm going to listen to people whose experiences are different from mine. I'm going to examine my own biases and work to change them. This isn't performative. I'm not doing this to save my reputation or my job. I'm doing it because I looked at myself honestly for the first time, and I didn't like what I saw. I want to be better than this to the woman I hurt. I'm truly sorry. You handled that situation with grace I didn't deserve. You deserve respect, and I failed to give it to you. I hope someday you can believe that I'm genuinely working to change." Madison hit post before she could second-guess herself. The comments came quickly, but they were different this time. Some people were still angry, and she understood why. But others said things like, "This feels more genuine," and "Actions matter more than words, but this is a start." One comment in particular caught her attention. "My mom is a housekeeper at a hotel. She comes home crying sometimes because of how people treat her, like she's not even human. I hope you really mean this." Madison screenshot that comment and saved it to her phone. She needed to remember why this mattered. That afternoon, Derek called. "I saw your post, and it's better than the first one. But Dad's lawyer is worried. He thinks it could look like you're trying to get sympathy from the judge." "I'm not," Madison said firmly. "That's not why I wrote it." "I believe you," Derek said, and Madison felt a tiny bit of relief. "But the hearing is next week. Are you ready for it?" "I don't know how to be ready for it." "I can't apologize to her. I can't explain myself. I just have to sit there and hope she doesn't hate us." "She won't hate us," Derek said. "That's not who she is. I've been researching her cases. She's fair, really fair. Even when people have treated her poorly in the past, she judges based on the law, not on personal feelings." "How do you know people have treated her poorly?" "I found some court transcripts. There was a case last year where a defendant made some pretty awful comments during the trial. She held him in contempt, but she still gave him a fair hearing. Her ruling was based entirely on the evidence." Madison didn't know if that made her feel better or worse. It meant Jasmine probably wouldn't punish them out of revenge. But it also meant that if Derek's father's case was weak, she wouldn't give them any breaks either. "I've been thinking," Madison said slowly. "Maybe I should come to the hearing, face her. Show her that I'm trying to be accountable." "Our lawyer says you absolutely should not come," Derek said. "It could look like intimidation or an attempt to influence her. The best thing you can do is stay away." So Madison couldn't apologize directly, couldn't explain herself, couldn't do anything to make this right. She just had to live with what she had done and hope it didn't destroy Derek's family in the process. She spent the next week volunteering at a community center. It was something she had found while researching how to actually make a difference instead of just posting about it online. She helped serve lunch to people who were struggling. She listened to their stories. She tried to see them as fully human, something she realized she hadn't been doing for most of her life. One woman, Mrs. Patterson, worked 3 part-time jobs and still barely made rent. "People look right through me," she told Madison while they were cleaning up after lunch. "Like I'm furniture, like I'm not even there." "I'm sorry," Madison said, and she meant it. Not the shallow sorry she had offered before, but deep, genuine regret for being the kind of person who had looked through people like Mrs. Patterson her entire life. "You're doing good work here," Mrs. Patterson said. "Keep coming back. That's what matters. Not one day of feeling guilty, but showing up again and again." Madison promised she would. The night before the hearing, Madison lay awake thinking about everything that had led to this moment. Her expensive wedding that was supposed to prove how successful she was, her perfect dress, her need for everything to be flawless, and how all of that had mattered more to her than treating another human being with basic decency. She thought about Derek, who might not trust her anymore. About his father, who might lose his business. About Jasmine, who had done nothing wrong but was probably dreading having to see Madison's face in her courtroom. Madison had spent her whole life thinking she was better than other people. Now she was learning that being better wasn't about money or status or perfect weddings. It was about how you treated people when no one was watching. It was about recognizing humanity in everyone, not just the people who looked like you or had the same advantages. She had failed that test spectacularly. And tomorrow she would find out what it cost. The courthouse was nothing like Madison had imagined. She had pictured something grand and intimidating. But it was just a regular building with fluorescent lights and worn carpet. Derek had insisted she shouldn't come, but Madison felt like she needed to be there. She needed to face what she had done, even if it was from the back row of the courtroom. She wore simple clothes, no designer labels, no jewelry except her wedding ring. She had tied her hair back and wore minimal makeup. She didn't want to look like the woman from the video, even though she knew that's exactly who she was. Derek sat with his father and their lawyer at the front table. He had seen Madison slip into the courtroom but hadn't acknowledged her. That hurt, but she understood. His family's entire future was at stake, and it was her fault they were so worried. The bailiff stood. "All rise." The Honorable Judge Jasmine Carter presiding. Madison's heart hammered as Jasmine entered through the side door. She wore judicial robes and carried herself with quiet authority. Her hair was pulled back in the same neat style she had worn at the wedding. For a moment, as Jasmine took her seat behind the bench, her eyes swept across the courtroom. They landed on Madison. It was just a second, maybe less. Jasmine's expression didn't change. There was no anger, no recognition, nothing. She simply looked at Madison the way she might look at any other person in her courtroom, then turned her attention to the papers in front of her. "Please be seated," Jasmine said. Her voice was calm and professional. "We're here today for the case of Greenfield Development versus Chen Construction. Are both parties ready to proceed?" The lawyers stood and confirmed they were ready. Madison watched as Jasmine reviewed the case file, her face neutral and focused. This was a different person from the server at the wedding. Not because she was wearing robes instead of a uniform, but because here in this space she held all the power. The developer's lawyer went first, presenting his case. He talked about broken contracts and missed deadlines, about substandard materials and cost overruns. He made Derek's father sound irresponsible and dishonest. Madison could see Derek's jaw tighten with each accusation. Then their lawyer stood to present the defense. He explained that the contract had ambiguous language about material specifications. He showed emails where the developer had approved the materials that were now being called substandard. He presented, evidence that the delays were caused by the developer changing requirements mid-project. Through it all, Jasmine listened carefully. She took notes. She asked detailed questions of both lawyers. She requested specific documents and examined them closely. Madison watched her work and felt a mix of admiration and shame. This woman was brilliant, thorough, fair, and Madison had treated her like she was worthless. The hearing lasted 4 hours. By the end, Madison's back ached from sitting on the hard bench, but she didn't move. She felt like leaving would be running away, and she had run away from uncomfortable truths her entire life. Finally, Jasmine set down her pen. I've heard both arguments and I've reviewed all the submitted evidence. This is a complex case with valid points on both sides. I'm going to take a brief recess to review my notes before issuing a ruling. We'll reconvene in 30 minutes. Everyone stood as Jasmine left the courtroom. Derek immediately came to the back where Madison sat. You shouldn't be here, he said quietly. I know, but I needed to be. Did you see the way she looked at you? Madison nodded. She barely looked at me at all, like I was just another person in the room. Maybe that's how she sees everyone, Derek said. Maybe that's what makes her a good judge. They walked out to the hallway. Derek's father was pacing, his face pale. The lawyer was on his phone, probably calling someone to discuss how the hearing went. Madison stood apart from them, not sure if she was welcome in their circle. Derek's mother approached her. They hadn't spoken since the wedding. Madison, she said carefully. How are you holding up? I'm okay. How are you? Terrified, Derek's mother admitted. But that judge, she seems fair. I watched her during the hearing. She asked tough questions of both sides. That has to be a good sign, right? Madison wanted to offer reassurance, but she didn't trust her own judgment anymore. I hope so. Derek told me you've been volunteering, his mother continued. At the community center. I have. That's good. Real change takes time and action. She paused, then added, I'm not ready to forgive you yet for what you did, but I can see you're trying. That matters. It wasn't much, but it was something. Madison felt tears threatening and blinked them back. Thank you. The 30 minutes felt like hours. Finally, the bailiff called them back into the courtroom. Everyone took their seats. Jasmine returned and sat behind the bench, a stack of papers in front of her. I've reached a decision, she began. This case involves complex contractual obligations and disputed interpretations. Having reviewed all the evidence and applicable law, here is my ruling. Madison held her breath. On the matter of material specifications, I find in favor of Chen Construction. The contract language was indeed ambiguous, and the evidence shows the developer approved the materials in question through written correspondence. Chen Construction cannot be held liable for using materials they were told were acceptable. Derek's father exhaled loudly. Their lawyer nodded, making notes. However, Jasmine continued, on the matter of project delays, I find partial fault with Chen Construction. While some delays were beyond their control, the evidence shows inadequate communication with the client during critical phases. This caused additional expenses for the developer that could have been avoided. Madison's stomach dropped. Therefore, my ruling is as follows. Chen Construction is not liable for the full damages claimed by Greenfield Development. However, they are liable for costs directly related to communication failures and resulting delays. I'm awarding Greenfield Development $250,000 in damages, not the $2 million they requested. $250,000. It was a lot of money, but it wasn't everything. The business would survive. Derek's father would lose a significant amount, but he wouldn't lose everything he had built. This court is adjourned, Jasmine said, striking her gavel once. As everyone began gathering their things, the bailiff approached Madison. Ma'am, Judge Carter would like to see you in her chambers. Madison's mouth went dry. Derek looked alarmed. Is that allowed? The bailiff shrugged. The case is over. She can speak to whoever she wants now. Madison followed the bailiff down a hallway to a door marked Judge's Chambers. The bailiff knocked once and opened it. Jasmine sat behind a desk, still in her robes, writing something. She looked up as Madison entered. "Close the door, please," Jasmine said. Madison did, her hands shaking. They were alone now. No cameras, no witnesses, no one to stop Jasmine from saying whatever she had been holding back. "Sit down," Jasmine said, gesturing to a chair. Madison sat. Jasmine studied her for a moment. "You came to the hearing?" "I did. My clerk recognized you from the video. Half the courthouse has seen it by now." Jasmine's voice was neutral, impossible to read. "I want you to know that it had absolutely no bearing on my decision today. I judge that case solely on its legal merits." "I believe you," Madison said quietly. "I watched you work. You were incredibly fair to both sides. That's my job." Jasmine paused, then said, "But we both know that's not why you're here in my chambers. You want to apologize." Madison nodded, tears already forming. "I do. I know it doesn't change anything. I know I can't undo what I did. But I need you to know that I'm truly sorry. Not because of who you turned out to be, but because of how I treated you. I was wrong. Completely wrong." Jasmine was quiet for a long moment. "Do you know what the hardest part was? It wasn't the things you said. I've heard worse, unfortunately. It was seeing everyone watching, and no one stopped you. All those people, in their expensive clothes, and not one person stood up and said, 'This isn't okay.'" "I know," Madison whispered. "That makes it worse." "I wanted to tell you to go to hell," Jasmine said bluntly. "When I saw you in my courtroom today, part of me wanted to throw the book at your husband's family just to hurt you back. But that's not who I am, and it's not what the law is about." "You ruled fairly," Madison said, "even after what I did to you." "Of course I did. That's what justice means." Jasmine leaned back in her chair. "I've been watching your social media. I saw your second apology. I saw the posts about volunteering. Some people think you're just trying to save face." "Maybe at first I was," Madison admitted. "But it's become more than that. I'm learning things about myself that are hard to accept. I'm realizing I've been walking through life with blinders on, not seeing people as fully human unless they looked like me or had what I had." Jasmine nodded slowly. "That's a start. But change isn't about feeling bad for a few weeks. It's about showing up consistently. It's about examining your assumptions every single day. It's about listening more than you talk, especially to people whose experiences are different from yours." "I know, I'm trying." "Are you?" Jasmine asked. "Because trying isn't just volunteering when people are watching. It's what you do when no one's paying attention anymore. It's how you treat the cashier when you're having a bad day. It's whether you speak up when someone else makes a prejudiced comment. That's where real change happens." Madison nodded, absorbing every word. Jasmine stood, signaling the conversation was ending. "I'm not going to tell you I forgive you. I don't know if I do yet. That's going to take time, and you're going to have to earn it through actions, not words. But I will say this. I hope you continue working on yourself. Not for me. For every person you're going to encounter for the rest of your life." "Thank you," Madison said, standing. "For your fairness today. For speaking to me now. For giving me something to work toward." "Don't thank me," Jasmine said. "Just do better." Madison left the chambers with tears streaming down her face. Derek was waiting in the hallway. He looked at her questioningly. "What did she say?" "She told me to do better," Madison said. "And she's right." 6 months later, Madison was still volunteering at the community center every week. She had lost her marketing job, but she had found work at a non-profit helping small businesses get started. The pay was less than half what she used to make, but the work felt meaningful. Derek had moved back in after 2 months of separation. They were in counseling together, working through the trust that had been broken. It was hard, but they were both committed to making it work. Madison never became friends with Jasmine. She saw her once from a distance at a community event. Jasmine was speaking about equal access to justice, and Madison sat in the back and listened. When their eyes met across the room, Jasmine gave a small nod. Not forgiveness exactly, but acknowledgement. recognition that Madison was still trying, and that was enough. Madison was learning that redemption wasn't about one grand gesture or a perfect apology.